Chelsea and I are in the basement to take some sample pictures in a low light environment. We're lit entirely by this artificial light here. I've put my camera into aperture priority mode with f2.8 selected. That's the lowest f-stop number this lens supports. And I've selected auto ISO, so the camera will automatically select the shutter speed and ISO to expose the picture properly. So I'll take a picture of Chelsea now. So that's not bad. The camera exposed it properly, but there's a bit of a problem. If you look closely, it's extremely noisy. That's because the camera had to select a very high ISO to properly expose in this dark environment, even though Chelsea's pretty close to the light. Also, you notice that the color temperature is completely wrong. I have the camera set to auto white balance, but it didn't do a great job of it because these lights are so extremely warm. Warm meaning very orange colored. So one way to rectify this is to add my own light, to add some flash. So I'll turn on the on-camera flash here and take another picture. So that's a big step in the right direction. We dropped to ISO 400, which gives us a much cleaner image, and the white balance is suddenly fixed because the flash here is always daylit balanced, but we can do better. Having the flash so close to the lens casts these really ugly shadows, both on her chin and against the wall, and it's pretty easy to fix with an external flash. Now you don't need any kind of fancy flash for this, but I do recommend getting a flash with TTL support for your particular camera model. I recommend looking at the Yongnuo YN468-2. So with the external flash on, I'll take another picture of Chelsea so we can see the difference. So putting the external flash on did a couple of things. The front lighting coming from the flash was moved farther from the lens, which casts a little more pleasant shadow, and it also has a bigger surface area. The on-camera flash is much smaller than this, and a larger surface area casts softer light. It's still a relatively small surface area, and it's still relatively close to the lens. So a really easy way to fix that is to use bounce flash instead. So I'll just turn the bounce flash on, and usually what I'll do is I'll pull out this little diffuser and leave this white card up. The white card will catch some of the light and reflect it directly at Chelsea. So most of the light here is going to be bouncing off this low ceiling, but some of it will be bouncing off this white card, and that'll give her just a little bit of a catch light. It's a really nice effect, and it's also really easy to do because this is built into most modern flashes. So I'll take another picture. Compared to the other pictures, the picture with the bounce flash has the background much more evenly lit. Because when the flash is direct, when it's pointed directly at Chelsea, the light falls off behind her because she's so much closer to the flash. Therefore, the subject's always going to be much brighter than the background. However, by bouncing the flash straight off the ceiling, more of the light is reaching the background, and it's more evenly spread across the foreground subject. It's still a little darker, but the balance is much better. Now I'd like to talk about how changing your ISO can change the effect because it requires more or less light from your flash. So I've been shooting at ISO 400, which is a good compromise. ISO 400 provides a reasonable amount of noise while not requiring your flash to do too much work. ISO 100, though, provides a much cleaner picture. However, because it's 2 stops brighter, I'm going to need to turn my flash up by 2 stops. Now, because this flash supports TTL, it'll automatically compensate by putting out 2 stops more light, 4 times more light. So I'll put my camera into ISO 100 mode and take another shot. Besides putting my camera into ISO 100, I put it into manual mode and set the shutter speed to 1/60th of a second. Otherwise, it would try to expose the ambient light properly, but because I'm using bounce flash, I don't even need to worry about the ambient light. I know the flash is going to overpower it. Well, looking at those pictures, they look pretty good, and ISO 100 looks okay, but listening to my flash, I noticed it was working a lot harder. It made a louder noise, and it took longer to recharge. You know, you kind of hear that like winding up sound that it makes. It took longer because at ISO 100, it needs to put out 4 times more light than ISO 400. So to compare it, I'll raise the ISO all the way to ISO 3200. Now compared to the ISO 100 shots, the effect is very different. you'll notice that the color went from being perfect to suddenly being very warm, very orange, and very brown. That's because at ISO 3200, the camera's TTL system needed to put out much less flash. Now you can get into situations indoors where the ambient light is a different color from your flash. That's what I've been dealing with here, and that's why we've seen these struggles between an orange-white balance and a very natural white balance. Sometimes if you want to use the artificial lights to light up the background or to partially light your subject, the easiest thing to do is to adjust the color of your flash to match that of the light. So what I find I like to do is I just take a picture of something white with the white balance here set to daylight. And as you saw in those pictures, that results in a picture that looks very orange if you look at Chelsea's shirt. Now, what I want to do is to make my flash the same color as these lights. I want to make my flash orange, and that way I can adjust the entire picture to be more blue, and the color will be consistent between the foreground that's lit by the flash and the background that's lit by the ambient light. So I'm going to add an orange gel to my flash now. So now that I have the orange gel attached to the flash, it will come out the same color as these lights here according to the camera. So I'll take another picture of Chelsea. It actually looks really weird when you're looking through the camera because you'll see this orange flash coming out and you think your pictures are going to be ruined. But if you have the white balance set correctly on the camera, then everything looks completely natural because the camera is going to pull everything towards the cool side, back to blue. So the color from the flash perfectly matches the color coming from your ambient lights. It's a good thing to do to carry around a bunch of gels like this if you're going to be shooting indoors and you think you might want to add a little bit of fill flash, because it's impossible to adjust the white balance when you have different colors of light in your pictures. You know, if you shoot raw, then you can adjust the entire picture towards blue or towards orange to fix any color problems. But when you have multiple light sources, like a fairly blue flash and a fairly orange light here, it's really difficult to fix that. So it's better to do it at the time you're shooting by adding a gel to your camera flash.